The glass wall of Concord Station's sunline lounge turned the late March morning into a lantern. After 3 long orbits spent in shadow, the commerce ring had rolled into full daylight, and the warmth pouring through the panoramic windows drew half the habitat out of their bunks and into public spaces like thirsty plants. Turning toward a lamp, everywhere the station's patchwork life mingled, saffron-robed sorry bargaining with sharp-eyed veterans over crates of spice resin, a cluster of human parents corralling children who smelled like cocoa and syrup, to Krenth engineers chittering and clicking as they argued over a schematic only they could hear in their own language. At a corner table near the window, Rowan Hale tried to enjoy his coffee before the day started insisting on him. It was strong, bitter, and exactly the same every Saturday because sameness was a kind of peace. Across from him, his daughter, Leela, leaned over her mug like it was a sacred artifact. Steam curled around her cheeks. She had demanded extra marshmallows, the maximum amount permitted by law, and the service drone had obliged with a solemn beep. Rowan lifted his cup to take a sip and caught sight of someone weaving through the crowd. She wasn't moving fast. She was moving carefully to sleek mobility supports, whispering against the deck plates. Her balance deliberate, her posture stubbornly upright. She was young, maybe early 20s by human standards, with deep cerulean skin and hair that fell in bright copper waves past her shoulders. A few passers-by glanced and looked away, the way people sometimes did when they weren't sure how to look without staring. What caught Rowan wasn't her beauty, though she was striking. It was the face she wore like a too-thin mask, hope layered over a tight, trembling urgency, as if she had promised herself she would not break in public, and was one thought away from failing that promise. Leela was mid-story, hands fluttering, and then Mr. Pebbles escaped during show and tell and bounced right onto Ms. Keene's desk. He went bowing. Rowan nodded automatically, but his eyes stayed on the young woman. She approached a table by the entrance, where 2 Valaran men scrolled through contracts on their tablets. Rowan watched her speak polite. Brief. One of them lifted a hand without looking up, dismissing her with a lazy wave. She swallowed, shifted her grip on the supports, and moved to a different table. A human woman sat alone, surrounded by shopping bags. Rowan saw the woman's shoulders tense, and her fingers tugged the bags closer, as if the blue-skinned stranger might steal them. Rowan's chest tightened with a quiet anger he did not have words for. The young woman nodded again. Thank you. Sorry. Always sorry, and drifted toward the center of the lounge. Sunlight caught her copper hair, turning it into a signal flare. She stood there, scanning faces and empty chairs with an expression that made Rowan think of someone trying to find a lifeboat in a storm. Leela's voice sharpened. Dad, are you even listening? Rowan blinked, guilt pricking him. I'm listening, bug. Mr. Pebbles. He glanced at her grin, escaped, and caused chaos. That was 5 minutes ago, Leela said with offended dignity. Now I'm telling you about when he tried to eat the glitter glue. Rowan smiled, but his gaze slid back. The young woman took a slow breath, squared her shoulders, and started toward Rowan's table. When she reached them, Her voice was soft but steady, carrying that distinctive resonance. Some species had emotion, making the air feel warmer or cooler round the words. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm sorry to bother you. I know this is strange, but would you mind if I shared your table up close?" Her amber eyes shone wetly. She looked like she'd already rehearsed the possibility of being told no one more time than she could endure. Rowan stood immediately and pulled out the empty chair as if the gesture could erase every dismissal she'd received. "Please," he said. "Sit. I'm Rowan, and this is my daughter, Leela." Relief crossed the woman's face in a rush so visible it almost hurt to see. She maneuvered into the chair with practiced care, resting her mobility supports against the window frame. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you so much. I'm Siren." Leela leaned forward, curiosity bright as a comet. "We come here every Saturday. It's our thing. I always get hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, and Dad gets boring adult coffee." Rowan gave his mug a wounded look. "My coffee has feelings." Siren's mouth twitched into a smile that reached her eyes despite whatever heaviness sat behind them. Hot chocolate sounds perfect. A drone floated over with a pleasant chime. Siren ordered a spiced tea common among her people, and a small pastry from the display case, something glazed and seed-studded. When the drone glided away, Leela launched into conversation with the unstoppable momentum of a 7-year-old who had never met a stranger she couldn't adopt in under 3 minutes. "I'm in first grade at Concord Primary. Miss Keene says I'm spirited, which is teacher language for too loud. And we have a class pet. Mr. Pebbles is a Martian sandhopper, and he's grumpy in the morning like my dad." "I am not grumpy," Rowan protested, then yawned and ruined his case. Siren laughed light, musical, like wind brushing chimes. "Do you have any other pets?" "Not right now," she added after a beat, her fingers wrapping around her cup as if the warmth could anchor her. "I used to. A little feline companion named Hush, silver fur, copper patches." "That's the cutest name," Leela declared, like she was always whispering secrets. Siren's smile widened, but something in her gaze dimmed for an instant. "That is why I named her. She would make the smallest sounds when she wanted attention." You had to lean close to hear. Rowan found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't expected. Siren listened to Leela as if every detail mattered. She asked questions, real questions about school, about Mr. Pebbles, about Lila's best friend Nia, and her rival in art class, Juno, and laughed in the right places. When Leela demonstrated how sandhoppers bounced by making her marshmallows hop across the table, Siren gasped theatrically like she was witnessing a miracle. They had been talking for a while when Siren set her cup down carefully, her shoulders lifting with an inhale that looked like preparation. "There is something I would like to tell you," she said, voice quiet. "The reason I needed to be here today. It is my birthday. I am 23 cycles." Lila's eyes went enormous. "It's your birthday?" Then, without any hesitation or shyness, she inhaled and burst into song. Rowan joined in a half-second later, deeper voice blending with Lila's enthusiastic, slightly off-key soprano. Nearby patrons glanced over, A Krenth at the next table clicked approval. In rapid rhythm, an older human couple chimed in on the final line. Even a Velaran trader lifted his head and offered a small nod of respect when the song ended. Siren had tears streaming down her cheeks, blue skin darkened where the tears ran, but she was smiling through them like someone remembering what it felt like to breathe. That was... Her voice cracked. She wiped at her face with trembling fingers. That was the most beautiful thing anyone has done for me in a long time. Everyone needs birthday songs, Leela said, as if stating a law of physics. Then her face lit up. Dad, we need cake. You can't do birthday without cake. Siren's hands lifted in alarm. No, please. I don't want to trouble you. Rowan glanced toward the counter. The lounge stocked an array of pastries, human cakes, alongside Velaran nutrient slabs and Thesauri sweetbreads. It's not trouble, he said gently. They've got good cake here. Let us. Before Siren could protest again, Rowan was on his feet. He returned a few minutes later, carrying a small chocolate cake with vanilla frosting and a single candle. He set it on the table like it was an offering. The candle flame winked to life. Someone nearby started the birthday song again, and this time it spread outward like a ripple through water. Humans. Sorry. Krenth. Clicking a harmonic counterbeat. Voices in different registers and languages braided together into one bright thing. Siren closed her eyes. Her lips moved silently, wish, prayer, promise, or all three. She leaned forward and blew the candle out. Applause scattered through the lounge, gentle and warm. Leela took control of the distribution with all the seriousness of an appointed official. Birthday person gets the biggest piece. That's policy. As they ate, something in Siren shifted. Like a locked door finally giving a little under persistent kindness, she stared down at her plate, the fork motionless in her hand. This lounge, she said at last, barely above a whisper, was my family's place. Rowan's stomach tightened. Lila's chewing slowed until she was still. Me, Siren continued, and my little brother, Taran, and our parents. We lived on the residential ring near the botanical corridor. My father worked hull integrity with station emergency response. My mother was pediatric staff at Concord Medical. Her fingers shook around the fork. Rowan reached across the table and, without thinking, placed his hand gently over hers. We were not wealthy, Siren said, a sad smile flickering. But Saturdays here, those were the happiest hours of my life. Taran always ordered berry waffles and made the syrup drip on purpose. My father told terrible jokes that made my mother groan and made us laugh until our skin patterns flushed. My mother stole bites of everyone's food. For a little while, nothing else mattered. Rowan swallowed. Siren. What happened? Siren's eyes closed. A tear slid down. 2 years ago, there was a failure in the residential ring's environmental systems. A cascade. The maintenance teams warned administration for months. They kept delaying. Next cycle. Next cycle. Her voice fractured. We were asleep when it happened. A breach. I woke up in medical 9 days later. The residential section depressurized. I was trapped in a collapsed corridor for hours before. Rescue found me. She glanced down. Rowan followed the movement to where her left leg ended below the knee. The mobility supports doing what flesh no longer could. The doctors could not regenerate the tissue, she whispered. They amputated. Lila's eyes shimmered. Rowan tightened his hand over Siren's. My parents, Siren said, and her voice shattered completely. And Taryn, they did not make it out. A sob tore free. Siren's shoulders shook. Rowan felt his own eyes burn before Rowan could find words. Leela slipped out of her chair, walked around the table, and wrapped her small arms around Siren like she was hugging the whole universe back together. I'm so sorry, Leela said quietly. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. But you're not alone right now. We're here. Siren clutched her, sobbing into Lila's hair. Rowan moved beside them and placed a steadying hand on Siren's shoulder. For a long moment, the lounge noise blurred into something distant. 3 people who had been strangers an hour ago sat in a small circle of shared grief and unexpected belonging. When Siren finally pulled back, her eyes were red-rimmed and luminous. I'm sorry, she murmured. I did not mean to fall apart. You don't apologize for grief, Rowan said, firm. Not ever. Siren wiped her face with a napkin, breathing shakily. I live with my aunt on the surface now. She took me in after rehabilitation, but it does not feel like home. Nothing does. She looked around the Sunline lounge as if every table held a ghost. Today, I wanted to sit here, just for a little while, to feel close to them. I thought if I could be in the place where we were happiest, I might remember what it felt like not to be empty. Her gaze met Rowan's. Fresh tears welled. I almost left when I saw how crowded it was. Then you said yes. You made room at your table. You sang to me. You gave me cake. You made me feel like I mattered. You do matter, Leela said with fierce certainty. Rowan looked at his daughter at the uncomplicated courage she carried, then back at Siren. We were going to the recreation deck later, he said. Nothing fancy, just our Saturday. If you'd like, come with us. Siren blinked in surprise. Are you sure? I do not want to intrude on your time together. You wouldn't be intruding, Rowan said. We want you there. After only a moment's hesitation, Siren nodded. I would really love that. They spent the afternoon under the gentle hum of Concord's recreation dome. Leela bounced in slow, floating arcs on the low-gravity trampolines while Rowan and Siren sat nearby, talking the way people do when something feels both new and strangely inevitable. Rowan told Siren about his work cargo oversight, steady hours, predictable routines. Siren spoke about her freelance digital artistry, about relearning her process after losing her leg, about adapting to seated haptic rigs and finding pride in persistence. They discovered shared oddities, an affection for ancient Earth films, a mutual preference for the station's artificial rain program over default sunshine, an agreement that the botanical corridor after mist cycle was the best smell in the habitat. When evening came, they exchanged comm codes at the transit hub. Thank you, Siren said, voice soft. You and Leela turned what I thought would be the loneliest birthday of my life into something bright. Rowan surprised himself by saying, same table next Saturday. Siren's face lit. I would love that. And then it became a rhythm. Saturday cocoa, rainy movie nights, trips to the archive library, where they sent each other ridiculous old film titles. Lila's school art exhibit where Siren stood beside Rowan like she belonged there, because she did. 2 months later, Siren moved back to the station. 3 months later, Rowan realized quietly, without drama, that what he felt had changed. Friendship had deepened into something warmer, heavier, truer. He didn't say it. Siren had survived. Too much. He had a child to consider. He didn't want to risk what they'd built. Then, in early August, the past returned with a calm chime. Rowan's ex-wife, Maren, called with news. A promotion, a flagship cruise vessel, and the home port reassignment Concord Station, more time with Leela. And then, softly, hesitantly, the suggestion that maybe, someday, they could try again. Rowan hung up with his mind in knots. Leela, bright with hope, immediately started building a fantasy where her parents reunited and everything snapped into a neat storybook shape. Rowan tried to explain it wasn't that simple, but children heard what they wanted to hear, and Leela wanted the world to become easy. The following Saturday, Siren sensed his distraction within minutes. Rowan admitted Maren was moving back. Siren said the right supportive things, but later, Rowan learned what had happened when he stepped away. Leela had told Siren everything, including her wish for her parents to reunite. After that, Siren began to withdraw. She was busy. She was tired. Rain check. Not this week. Rowan's confusion turned into hurt. Lila's confusion turned into sadness. And then, one evening, the truth hit Rowan like sudden decompression. Siren thought she was an obstacle. She thought stepping back was the noble thing, making space for Lila's real family. Rowan didn't let himself overthink it. He went straight to Siren's door. When Siren opened it, panic flashed across her face. Rowan, is Leela okay? She's fine, he said. She's safe. But we need to talk. Inside Siren's small studio, holograms of her family glowed softly on the walls. They sat on her second-hand couch, and Rowan looked at her until she couldn't look away. You're pulling away because of Maren, he said. Siren's eyes filled. Rowan, Leela told you. He continued, about wanting her parents. Together, Siren stared down at her hands twisting in her lap. She deserves it, she whispered. A complete family, to parents in love. All of you together. I have no right to stand in the way of that. Rowan's voice sharpened with gentle insistence. Siren, look at me. She did. Tears spilled. Maren and I are not getting back together, Rowan said. She mentioned the idea. I did not accept it. I did not consider it, not for even a second. We divorced because we weren't right together. That didn't change because she took a job here. But Leela is 7, Rowan said softly. She wants a fairy tale. She wants an easy ending. But she will be okay with the truth if we give it to her with love. Siren's breath trembled. Rowan swallowed, his heart pounding hard enough to shake his ribs. And I need to tell you something else. These last months, they've been the happiest I've had since the divorce. Not because of convenience. Because of you. Siren went still. You make me laugh. Rowan said, voice rough. You make this station feel less like metal and more like home. You're kind and stubborn and real. When I'm with you, I'm not bracing for impact. I'm breathing. He took her hands. You are not an obstacle to my family. You are my family. Siren's face crumpled. Rowan, I love you, he said simply. I'm in love with you. I have been for a while, for a heartbeat. Siren looked like someone hearing music after years of silence. Then she broke, sobbing, and leaned into him. I love you too, she whispered, against his shirt. I've loved you since you sang to a stranger and made her feel seen. But I was afraid. Afraid I wasn't enough. Afraid Leela would hate me for not being her mother. Rowan kissed her soft, careful, like a promise not to rush what was. Fragile. When they pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. We'll figure it out, he murmured. All of it. The co-parenting, the schedules, the feelings. But don't leave us. Don't leave her. I won't, Siren said, clutching him like an anchor. I'm sorry I tried to. The next morning, Rowan sat Leela down at their kitchen table and explained, gently and clearly, that Maren moving back didn't mean her parents would reunite. Leela cried, argued, then finally admitted she liked Siren, liked the way her dad smiled when Siren was around, liked having someone who listened, like it mattered. Can she still come to Saturday Cocoa? Leela asked, sniffing. Always, Rowan said, and meant it. When Maren arrived 8 weeks later, there were awkward introductions and cautious politeness, and then unexpectedly respect. Maren didn't try to compete with Siren. Siren didn't try to replace Maren. They built something practical and imperfect and good around what mattered most. Lila's steady sense of being loved. Months later, back at the sun-lined lounge table by the window, sunlight on copper hair, marshmallows floating in cocoa foam, Rowan lowered himself to one knee. Leela stood beside him, clutching a small velvet box with both hands and vibrating. With excitement, Siren, Rowan said, voice trembling, the day you asked to share our table, you changed our lives. You brought light back into our world. You showed me what partnership can be. You showed Leela what resilience looks like. Will you marry me? Will you officially be part of this family we've built? Siren laughed and cried at the same time, her skin patterns flickering with joy. Yes, she breathed. Yes, absolutely. Yes. The lounge erupted the way it had on her birthday. Applause, clicks, cheers, lifted cups. Someone shouted a toast to the family that started with a shared table. 6 months later, on a warm Saturday in September, they were married in the same corner where it all began: white flowers, star string lights, and the quiet miracle of a space made sacred by kindness. Leela tossed petals down the aisle like she was blessing the whole station and told anyone who listened, I knew it forever. Adults just take longer to notice things. Rowan's vows promised space at the table, birthdays celebrated like they mattered, and a home built one patient moment at a time. Siren's vows spoke of grief and joy living side by side, of broken not meaning worthless, of the courage it took to ask for what you needed. When they kissed, Someone started singing a ridiculous happy wedding day song. Everyone laughed through tears, and afterward chocolate. Cake with vanilla frosting. Just like that first candlelit birthday, Siren closed her eyes and made the same wish she had made the day she almost walked away. Gratitude. Because sometimes a life doesn't change with an epic gesture or a grand rescue. Sometimes it changes because one person says, "Yes, you can sit here." Sometimes it changes because someone makes room at their table and, in doing so, makes room in their world.